before COVID, and that really was a good deal for them. All right. So anyway, we're moving on to the healthcare discussion, and Arthur Mrozowski is going to be leading that. So Arthur, why don't you take over, and then we'll be watching you, etc. So
sounds good. Hey, Marty. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm seeing myself. I'm so proud of having a big picture of me. But can we see the other panelists as well? Like on your Zoom, if you turn back, like I'm the only one that is on the panel, unless you have another way of.
I see Sandrine and I see Mark.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And
good deal. No, I was just thinking that I'm so special that I'm the only one that is visible.
You are special, Arthur.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's how I got my special ad too. Yeah, hello everybody. So it was good to hear all of those fantastic panelists before, and then money is all fantastic, but I think that health is probably the most important thing that we all have, right? So I'm really happy to be presenting the panel that will talk for 15 minutes or so about the healthcare 2023, and then we have a wonderful panelists, two of them. Sandrine Miller-Montgomery, President and CEO of Micronoma. Is that properly pronounced? Okay.
That's correct.
And then we have a Mark Urdahl, that it's a GP of Return on Life Fund, and then both of them are, extremely interesting, at least from my point of view. I found them for, like, when we were talking before today's conference, that they have both are engaged in the incredible products that they will share with us. And then as far as I'm concerned, if you want to know who I am, I'm going to post my little bio link in LinkedIn. I'm 35-year OG in the Silicon Valley doing all kinds of things. But recently I've been involved in a couple of life science projects, which I guess that qualifies me to ask the questions to the people that are smarter than me. But let's start talking and doing the introduction. And then I would like to ask Sandrine to tell a little bit about yourself and then your company, and then we'll move on to Mark.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be here with you today. My name is Sandrine Miller-Montgomery. I'm a PharmD PhD by training. Went into hardcore science, life science, when I was freshly graduated. And then about 5-6 years later, decided to move to the dark side, the business side, marketing, sales. And most recently, I created my own company with two of my co-founders named Micronoma. So I'm now the CEO of that company. The purpose of Micronoma is to detect cancer early, and by that we mean stage 1 and stage 2, with a minimally invasive technology, which is a blood draw. That's named liquid biopsy, and you may have heard about liquid biopsy in the field. It has been bubbling to the surface. We do that with difference compared to traditional liquid biopsy. We're not looking at the human genome coming from the cancer cells. We're looking at microbes that are associated with cancer tissue. And I'll be happy to give you a little bit more on that after Mark introduces himself.
All right, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Urdahl. I manage the Return on Life Fund, which is focused on healthcare, and with kind of a mission to look for opportunities that can extend our health span. Because making money is useless and getting returns are useless if you're not there to enjoy it. So my goal is to be enjoying the fruits of our investments well past 100 years old. So that said, we have taken kind of a practical approach to look for things that have, we're not looking for immortality or age reversal. We're looking for practical new indications that can kind of help the mechanics of health span, if you will. And The one that we've kind of stumbled upon that's extraordinarily interesting, and I'll talk more about it later, is the ability to detect the potential for Alzheimer's and prevent cognitive impairment from occurring. And we've taken actually some old technologies and some new technologies and put them together in a workflow and a system that incorporates clinical trials. And our preclinical data was really where we kind of discovered this. It was kind of a surprise because most of the industry focuses on curing Alzheimer's. And after decades of research and billions of dollars, there's not much to show for it. And our little effort has really proved promising in terms of its potential to help all of us avert what is really a disastrous, horrific disease. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Mark. Sandrine, I wanted to start with you, and I think that one of the most important things I think that we can do in medicine in general, and this is your focus, is to be more preventive than reactive, right? So I'd like to hear your side of the story about what it is that your company is doing in terms of the early diagnostics versus catching things that are beyond repair.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and thank you for asking that question, because I think there is something a little bit off in US in the healthcare system, in the sense that it's not really a healthcare system, it's a disease care system. We get treatment in place, not cure, because not everything is cure among treatment. And on the investment side, a lot of the investment is very, as you say, very reactive and not proactive. Very reactive in the sense that there's a lot of investment in therapeutic, in drug discovery. And that's great, don't get me wrong. As I say, I'm a PharmD PhD, so drugs are important in my life. But medical drugs, just to make sure everyone is on the same page here. What I think is important is prevention, and in our case, diagnostic should receive as much attention as therapeutic. Our company, for example, right now is focusing on the early detection of lung cancer. And you may wonder why lung cancer? The reason why we focus on this cancer first is because about 25% of all of the people who are going to die of cancer this year in US or in the world, 25% of them are going to die of lung cancer. This is more than breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and prostate cancer all together. So it's a major killer. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, because if you detect lung cancer in stage 1, you have about 80+% chance of survival. So this is a decent curable, in a way, cancer, at least treatable cancer. Stage 2 is a little bit less. It's around 60% survival rate at 5 years, but it's still decent. It crashed to 20% at stage 3 and 5% of survival rate at 5 years at stage 4. And unfortunately, to these days, 75% of all of the lung cancer patients are going to be diagnosed late in stage 3 and stage 4, making it the death sentence that it is in many cases. And so that needs to change. We need to find a way to detect early this type of cancer so that they can be treated. Because, by the way, this is not the death of pharmaceutical company if we detect in stage 1 or stage 2. In fact, I would argue that it's even a good deal for pharmaceutical company, because pharmaceutical company who have a drug approved for stage 4 may be able to deliver their drug for 3, 4, 5 months to the patient before ultimately the death of the patient. But now you find them in stage 1 and stage 2, now you can give the drug for the entire duration of the treatment, which is going to be maybe 6 months, a year, depending of the drug type and the cancer type. So it's a win-win situation for everyone to do early cancer detection. So win for the patient, obviously, saving his life, it's a win for the pharmaceutical company that could sell their drug longer. But at the same time, the drug doesn't need to be given at the same amount. So it's a huge saving for the healthcare system itself. It costs about 50% less to treat a cancer patient in stage 1 or stage 2 than in stage 3 or stage 4. And then you have better chance to cure them as well. So that's where we have put our emphasis. As I mentioned in the introduction, we do that by liquid biopsy. So we are looking for microbes that are found in the tumor. So first thing first, everyone needs to agree that, and feel free to disagree, but I won't agree with you, that we are not a sterile entity. We understand now that we have bacteria and fungi and viruses in our gut, but the same is true in our organs. Even when you are perfectly healthy, you have a normal flora in your organs. And so the premise of our technology is that when cancer cells die, they go in the circulation and they bring their microbial load with them, so bacteria, virus, and fungi. And each cancer tissue have a very different microbial population. So think about it. You're not expecting the same population of microbes in an ocean floor than in a prairie or in a garden soil. Well, the same thing is happening in your organs. So you won't have the same microbes in a lung cancer than in a breast cancer tissue, for example. When that cellular turnover happens and gets eliminated in the blood, we capture in the blood this signature from the microbes, and that's how we enable the detection. And the uniqueness of our technology is that instead of looking at 23,000 human genes, now we have a library of 2 million microbial genes, so a natural booster of the signal. And usually when you have about one cell, tumor cell circulating, you have 100 to 500 microbes circulating as well. So we have a natural boosting of the signal, which makes us more sufficient to detect in the early stage of the disease compared to traditional liquid biopsy.
Great. So you're just focusing right now mostly on just the lung cancers.
Lung cancer is our first one.
You expanded out to other aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 20 cancers for which we have proof of concept. We publish our data in Nature in 2020, and then we publish again in Science and in Cell last year. But lung cancer is the first one, and breast, colorectal, liver, pancreatic, ovarian are examples of all cancer we are tackling shortly. Great.
Well, we'll get back to you and in your company, and in terms of where exactly you are, and in terms of the FDA approvals, and also ask a need for what it is that you guys need in order to get you going. But I'd like to get the other side of the interesting diagnostic story from Mark, which doesn't focuses on, he's not focusing on rejuvenation issues here in Silicon Valley, but like the blood transfusions of the new plasmas for the CEOs of the Silicon Valley, but instead he's doing a very interesting diagnostics that pertain to Alzheimer's disease. So I'd like to have Mark tell us about what it is that you're doing with your company, and then we'll come back to the issue of how do we help you guys to get where you wanted to get to.
Great, thanks, Arthur. And just to be clear, our nonprofit entity, the Young Blood Institute, is actually doing transfusions.
Oh,
it's just that we have a different premise around what we can achieve and what we might learn. So we started out saying, and I met with all the kind of famous mice research people at Stanford, Berkeley, UCSF, and all that way back when. And honestly, none of them know a lick about human medicine. And I actually started my career with IBM Biomedical Systems, who invented the blood cell separator that's used for transfusions. That they sold it, and it's got new brands, new names today, but it's all the same stuff, which is to take blood out of one arm, spin it around, separate it by specific gravity, return certain components, and take out certain components. And so we sort of cast a wide net and spent a lot of money on flow cytometry, and we discovered new testing, viscosity testing. Your blood is kind of like engine oil. It gets thicker and stickier with age. And, but ultimately, and so we just, when we start out with a very basic hypothesis that we could reboot everybody's immune system over the age of 50. The guys at Stanford, the CyTOF course said we ought to lower that to 30 because that's when all the underlying pathologies start developing. So we did. But honestly, we disproved that hypothesis. We didn't really move the meter too much on immune markers. I mean, 15, 20%. But the big discoveries were potential for cardiovascular, prophylactic treatment of cardiovascular disease. This is kind of like changing the oil in your engine, and you clear it out and the engine runs better. The second thing, and the biggest thing, because cardiovascular has a lot of solutions out there in the marketplace, including heart surgery, which I happened to watch just out of school with biomedical systems because we sold products to those guys. But there's a lot of solutions out there that are sort of acceptable or semi-acceptable, but in Alzheimer's, there's nothing. And we discovered last year that we could detect, that we detected high levels of amyloid beta, with meaning a 90% probability of confirmation by a PET scan in 25% of our cognitively normal subjects. So that's a big number. I mean, I'm talking about people like everybody on this panel, friends that of mine that were in the study that, I had the pleasure to call up and say, hey, we might have a problem here. And fortunately, what we discovered is that we can clear the amyloid beta using plasma exchange. So it's kind of like dialysis for the brain. And it's not a cure, it's a therapeutic. It's not as bad as dialysis, that it's going to be a 3 times a week kind of a deal. It's going to be, for, let's say, extreme cases, more like, a couple times every few months. And for less extreme cases or kind of maintenance, it might be, the initial 6 treatments, which you need to do to get rid of 98% of the old stuff. And then some maintenance treatments along with monitoring using the blood test. So the blood testing is kind of, as Sandrine pointed out, that's our kind of canary in the coal mine that lets us know there's a potential problem. Then we use a PET scan to confirm it, because that's the ultimate diagnostic. But the problem with PET scans today is they're very hard to get. They're not accessible and they're very expensive. So I've set up another company, AmBARI Healthcare, that is basically going to sort of commercialize the findings from the Young Blood Institute and then add new intellectual property, particularly with an imaging focus, so that we can get relatively accessible, quick information right in your doctor's office with a very inexpensive scanning system. But today we are using the scanning systems from all the kind of elite research universities around the country and the world, from Banner Health to Baylor to different locations in San Diego and Florida. And I've recruited the top investigator in the world, Colin Masters, who basically is the guy that discovered amyloid beta back in the 80s. And he's kind of the godfather of the industry. And we are expanding kind of our preclinical work to a larger scale. And the idea is to sort of reprove what the data that we've already discovered. But our focus, unlike the industry, which is focused on curing Alzheimer's, is focused on preventing it. And so our target market, that makes our, you said there's about 35, 40 million people that have Alzheimer's worldwide. That means there's about 150 to 200 million that have high levels of amyloid beta, because the pathology takes decades to develop. So if you can catch it early, it's kind of like catching colon cancer or breast cancer early, or lung cancer, as in the case Sandrine has brought up. There's a great option for secondary prevention. And something that we're doing kind of uniquely, we're doing a little convertible note right now. I mean, we've gotten some funding from Shimadzu Corporation, which builds PET scanners and pretty much pioneered the amyloid beta testing. They won a Nobel Prize for it in the 2000s. So that's kind of our screening and confirmation approach. And then we use plasma exchange, which is not proprietary, but we have proprietary protocols. fact, we hired the nurses from a prior study that had a 61% success rate in stopping the progression of Alzheimer's, but they, again, were focused on moderate stage Alzheimer's patients. And we didn't really go into this thinking we would discover that, you know, people like you and me have got high levels of amyloid beta, and it's a lot easier to get it out when you could write a check and get it done than when you've got a constituency of, you know, a dozen people, you know, from financial advisors to neurologists and neuropsychologists to, you know, the assisted living people. I mean, it's a pretty hairy downhill slope. And I've had friends who have died of Alzheimer's. It's awful. And but what we're doing as a part of our investment offering is what we call a bifurcated investment option, where you can invest, if you just want to invest straight investment or a convertible note, great, no problem. Or if you're going to put you know, $100 into a note, you can split it 50-50, and you can put $50 into the nonprofit as a donation. You get a write-off immediately, and you can put $50 into the venture, and we'll give you credit as if you'd put $100 in on conversion. So what that does, it basically gives you at least a 2 or 3x structural return advantage over any normal kind of an investment. And if you make the donations in stock that have low basis, then it's almost like free money. And I'm happy to walk people through that, you know, later on if anybody's interested. But the other kind of perk that we're offering is that people who invest in AmBARI will all get free amyloid beta screens, and they'll gain access to our studies. So most healthcare investments, you make an investment, you hope it works, you think you're doing some good, and maybe 5 or 10 years later it works. And maybe in 10 years you need it, maybe you don't. In this case, this is something investors can get access to, and either for themselves or for their friends and family, they can put them in the studies. And that's rather unique, and it's a tremendous opportunity to really extend, you know, preserve and extend your health span so that you don't lose track of where you put your money.
No, that's wonderful. It sounds as if that's going to be in the future, right, Mark? But do you think that that's something that eventually, like, how long of the road to the FDA approval as far as you're concerned? For
the FDA approved plasma exchange in the 80s. This is like, you know, talking about you know, penicillin or something. I mean, it's what's different is it's a new indication. Okay, so the indications are typically for autoimmune disorders, and there's a sort of a set of niche disorders. But what we're looking at are kind of the big two, which is cardiovascular and Alzheimer's. But we can treat people today in our studies who are cognitively normal patients, subjects, with no FDA requirement. The only FDA requirement we actually have is for the some advanced tracers that we use in PET scans. So at Colin Masters and Sissons, we're using literally the most advanced tracer. Tracers are what they inject into that have radioactive material to allow the PET scan to read what's in your brain. So we're using the most advanced tracers in the world because we want this to be sort of publishable in Nature and Science and all that. Because Colin, you know, he's a top guy, and the Shimatsu people are kind of in the same camp. I mean, they're Nobel Prize winners, and so we're doing everything there. But it's the tracer is the only thing that needs what's called an investigational new drug approval. What's proprietary about what we're doing is putting it all together in a system and a workflow, and we're developing new imaging technologies, which in those cases that'll take, you know, a few years to come to market.
Okay, and then essentially, if you have insurance, those will be like something that the doctor can recommend in terms of the
in the future.
In the future, yeah. You see, like 5-10 years from now.
But right now, you can make an investment, write a check. And
I just put $100K, and then at least you sign up for a program, right?
Right. We can give people access.
Sounds great. Sandrine, we talk about your company too, little bit, but essentially what I wanted to ask you is like at what stage of development you are in terms of getting the FDA approval, how much money are you looking for to raise, and what is the structure of your company right now? If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things to understand in our technology, we are consider an LDT, which is a laboratory developed test. So what does it mean? That means that, let's say, taking the example of our first solution for lung cancer, you get a full body scan, or you have a car accident and an X-ray is done. Anyway, any reason, your doctor find a nodule in your lung. And the question is going to be, well, do you have lung cancer, or is that nodule benign? The good news is 95% of the time it's going to be benign. The bad news is that if it's 5% of lung cancer, you need to act fast. So that's where our system arrives. It's laboratory developed test, meaning the clinician will send us one of your blood samples, and we are going to process them in our lab. I'm mentioning that because laboratory developed tests do not fall under the FDA purview, but under CMS. CMS that you probably know, because CMS, the biggest arm that's known is Medicare on the insurance side, but they have another entity, which is CLIA, and CLIA is the organ regulating laboratory developed test. So pretty much every liquid biopsy that you know on the market right now are under CLIA regulation, and CAP, there is different agency, CLIA, CAP, New York State. So we are CLIA, CAP, New York State accredited in our facility at Micronoma. With that doesn't mean that we don't want to get on the radar of the FDA. And the reason is our customers are going to be clinicians, and clinicians are used to prescribe drugs that are approved by the FDA. And so there is a certain trust into the fact that something has been reviewed by the FDA. So don't get me wrong, the early adopter, we're launching the solution this year. So the early adopter, they understand already that we are not FDA regulated, and they will go and get, the solution directly, order the solution directly from our website without worrying about it. But for the later stage, in 2 years, 3 years, when we really want to be accessible by everyone and build awareness, it's going to be better to have the FDA stamp. So on our way to get an FDA approval, we did a first stop, which is doing a Q-sub. That's another way to say that we want to talk to the FDA and say, hey, could you accelerate our path for approval by giving us what we call a breakthrough designation. Breakthrough designation means that the FDA agree that no one does the same thing as we do with the same methodology, and no one does it with the same performance for the benefits of the patient. And I apologize if you hear music. It's not me playing music in my boombox. There is a concert playing in the background. So anyway, so you go to the FDA to just get that stamp in a way, and we got that stamp. So in January 2023 of this year, they granted us breakthrough designation. So that means that now every time we want to accelerate the path to clinical trial for in our case, a 510K, we pick up the phone and we say, hey, FDA, we want to talk to you. And because they give us this breakthrough designation, they pick up the phone in priority. So going now to your question, Arthur, about which stage of the company are we? So as I mentioned, we are launching the solution under LDT this year. And we are raising our first Series A. We already raised 18 million, roughly 18 million, 17.5, 17. And now we are raising 50 million, 50, through our Series A to enable us for the commercialization at scale. A big chunk will go through the clinical trial facing the FDA that I mentioned, as well as you were hinting, lung cancer is just a beginning for us. So continuing our work in all of these different cancer types that I mentioned earlier that need early cancer detection solution, but not only. Our solution works for very likely, and we'll work that with companion diagnostic and in partnership with pharmaceutical company, where we could help pharmaceutical company find a responder or non-responder to their drug with their platform, with this platform.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking for the money from family offices and
Absolutely. So far we have received our first round. Our seed and convertible notes were coming from two sources, a VC and a foundation. The VC itself used to be associated with the family office, a spin-off, and now they are their own VC office. But yes, we are looking to find a diverse pool of investors, because for us the goal is to be able to made aware as many people as possible. So in that case, a dollar is not a dollar. A dollar is as good as a network that comes with it. And so that's why we are looking for different profile of investor to enrich the network of our company.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, and then you're based in San Diego, right?
That's correct. That's a San Diegan accent. No, that's a French accent, but I have been moving in San Diego in 23. So yes, we headquarter the company in San Diego.
Wonderful. And Mark, what about your plans? And you had a little slide. I don't know if you figured out how to share it with us, like the executive summary.
Yeah, well, I just sent that to Marty, and I think he put it on the chat.
Okay.
I could put up any slide you want, but
yeah, I think you could. I mean, there's a way of actually in a little menu that under Zoom you can actually share the document.
You want me to focus on a particular area, or
yeah, I was thinking, like, since we're talking about money, like what we like to better understand on, you know, how to help those great causes to be well funded, right? So this is the area where we should kind of focus right now on, and wrapping up this panel, meaning, you know, who can help and how can they help, where they
yeah,
need
let me
to
just do this. Let me see if I can pull something up. Let me see if I can share. Oh yeah, it looks like I can. I'm gonna share something. Now this is, I got the wrong slide, but since I'm here, let me just point out a couple of things real quick. What we do is we partner with private care physician clinics, and we've got a model where we can deploy any private care. So this started out honestly with a lot of friends across the country wanted to do it, and I just figured out how to ship, you know, nurses and machines to them or to their doctor's offices. So we use private care physicians as locations in our institutional review board approval. So that's very unusual because most studies are done in hospitals and with big bureaucracies, and you can't really. I've had friends of mine try to get into the Stanford studies and, you know, make any kind of donation, and they couldn't get in. So we make it very easy to, you know, to sort of participate. But and this is our quick, you know, process flow, which is screen. If the screens are positive, then we do a PET scan. And if the PET scan, we send that to Australia and they do an automatic reading. And if that confirms it, then we do the plasma exchange. And this is kind of where we're headed in terms of a platform that integrates ongoing treatment and clinical trials at the same time. Because if you're doing secondary prevention, you can't just be in and out in 2 or 3 years. You've got to study it over 10 years. And so we have the ability to kind of bring the therapy to market and then also explore new additional therapies as they come along in the same platform. So today it's plasma exchange. Tomorrow could be plasma exchange plus some new kind of cell therapy, for example. And so it's really a kind of a framework we're developing. But back to the offering, this is what I call a, you know, bifurcated investment option. But basically, you know, there's a way to sort of leverage your investment beyond a return on investment and get a return on life, your own life, your friend's life, your wife's life, because we can, through the clinical trial process, give you access to these things. And as I said, anybody who gets in, we'll give complimentary screening to, which is, you know, not inexpensive. And then here's just kind of another way of looking at it, which is the funds come in, there can be dollars that go to AmBARI Healthcare, and there can be dollars that go to the Young Blood Institute. And the Young Blood Institute can also accept stock And if you give stock that has a basis of, 10 or 20 or 30, 40%, then you don't pay cap gains on that donation. It's kind of free money, and you get credit for the write-off. So if you give $100 worth of stock and you pay $10 for it, you're saving the tax effect on 90, and you're getting to write off 100 at the same time. So it almost pays for your actual investment, and then we'll give you credit for the same as if you'd put in $200 on the total investment in terms of the conversion rights. So that's the kind of the investment structure. We've put a lot of money into it over the last 5 or 6 years, and we're going to be putting more because we've got about 8 or 9 patents in process to develop new imaging technologies. The goal is basically going back to this model of private care physicians, is to be able to put very inexpensive scanning systems in the hands of private care physicians, because that's the front line of defense, where people want to try to predict and prevent diseases like Sandrine's. I mean, Sandrine could, that could potentially fit in our platform, someday when she gets through her FDA approval. But the idea is to make this stuff accessible, and that's where I think everyone would like to get to. It's just that our medical system, healthcare system, as Sandrine pointed out, is more of a disease management system, not a health system. And mental health, of course, is probably the most important distinguishing factor amongst our species. So that's where we've kind of settled on, clearing amyloid beta before you become cognitively impaired as a high priority. And I can tell you, being Scandinavian, it's a high priority for me. If anybody didn't know it, Scandinavians have a 2 times higher rate of Alzheimer's than anywhere else in the world. And I don't know if it's because it's always dark and they're always drinking, or there's something genetic, but they've got whole institutes up there in Sweden that are focused on Alzheimer's big time. So for us, it's something you don't want to get too close to.
Mark, you had a slide with the private care physicians, or those are like the specialized private clinics that actually are currently enable you one to go out there and access your therapy, or
yeah, I mean, honestly, it's even easier than that, Arthur. If you told me that you had a doctor in SoCal that you use and that you wanted to get treated in SoCal, we can, we have a process to engage with the private care physician where we can turn on a doctor's office, logistically, legally, inside of 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks to ship equipment, and we got to sign them up to receive pharmaceuticals, and because we're using 5% albumin and immunoglobulins as part of the replacement formula protocol. But bottom line, we come to you, or as close to you as we can. And, this started with, like I said, I thought I was going to have to fly all my friends to Florida or California, and then I realized that their time is a lot more valuable than my nurse's time, and the shipping costs of the machines and all of that. So we just set up this mobile deployable model where we can be anywhere in the country and scale up very quickly and very adaptively as personal situations and market requirements dictate.
Right. Well, I'm in Capitola, so don't demote me. Capitola.
Who's your doctor?
Cooler than SoCal, but thanks. And I don't know, Marty, how much time do we have?
Negative 1 minute.
Okay, well, I would say, Sandrine, if you wanted to wrap up the panel, and then like it was very educational for me and very uplifting. Marty knows that last month or so, or maybe this month, last month, the meeting in New York of the family offices, the Ivy League family offices, in New York. Tim Draper had talked a lot about the medicine in the United States, and it was kind of discouraging. But you know, the whole development and of all of the new diagnostics and therapies are just amazing. So I'm learning quite a bit from you guys. But enough of that. Sandrine, if you can wrap it up, I really wanted to thank you, and we'll let Mari continue on.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all, guys, to emphasize, yes, it's good to invest in therapeutic and hope for a return on investment in 50 to 20 years. But it's even more interesting, I think, to invest in diagnostic and have a return on life and a return on investment in 3 to 5 years. So that's one thing to keep in place. And just another thing is, I know we just went through a pandemic when microbes are the bad guys. But keep in mind that microbes were on the planet 4 billion years before us. They will be likely after us. We leave the planet, they will still be there. So, and we cannot ignore them because we evolved in a pool of microbes, and 99.9999999% of them are the good guys. And so we need to continue being nice with our microbes, because they can be source for new discovery, new therapeutic, and in our case, new diagnostic.
Thank you.